Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the National Apartment Association's Mental Health Awareness Week. I'm your host, Tiana Heath, the Senior Manager of Industry Relations with NAA. We are kicking off the first part of a four-part series this week on mental health. Just a little bit of housekeeping. NAA antitrust compliance statement is on our NAA website where you can review it at any time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any NAA staff member. Our information today is for educational purposes only, and we hope that you get so much out of it. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. The perfect way to kick off this week is to hear from Matrix Fitness. NAA's Mental Health Awareness Week is sponsored by Fitness. They are a proud sponsor of and a proud partner with NAA here and strongly support mental health advocacy for all stages and stages. They uplift the importance of movement and its positive impact on mental well being to cultivate self care in our communities and everywhere. So, with that being said, today I would love to introduce our incredible speaker, Jennifer Cox, with the National Trainer Network, who provides oversight and supervision for certified MHFA and national trainers.
Mhm.
The National Council of Wellbeing, Mental Wellbeing, has been gracious enough to partner with us this week and bring us this timely and relevant information. After today's session, head over to our mental health awareness webpage where you can find more resources. I will provide the link in the Q&A. If you have any questions along the way, please post them in the Q&A section and we will address them at the end of our call. Without further ado, Jennifer, come on up.
Thank you, Tiana. And good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. And thank you for the invitation, first of all, to join this beautiful week of conversations around well-being and mental well-being that the NAA is providing to each and every single one of you. As introduced, my name is Jennifer Cox, and I am the manager of our National Trainer Network from Mental Health First Aid USA. Mental Health First Aid is in 27 countries at this point, and I get the privilege and honor of having conversations like we're going to have here today, as well as providing information, training, conference sessions around this topic all across the United States and across the globe. I feel very, very grateful for the chance that I get to do this today and love the partnership that we've had with the NAA over the past couple years. Actually, Tiana, we've done a couple of these mental health awareness weeks, and so excited to share some information, have a little conversation with each one of you here today, and hopefully inspire you to maybe take a little bit of a look inside, a look around, and move from this space with a little bit of literacy and awareness beyond what you came into the conversation with. So let's go ahead and jump into this rise opportunity. The first thing I want to draw our attention to is that we obviously have challenges in our life that impact so many different things, whether it's our everyday life with our families and our workplaces. We've also all navigated a pretty interesting past few years, haven't we, in regards to this pandemic experience? I don't really know if it's over or not yet. I'm not quite sure where we stand in that, but we do know that things changed drastically. We do know that there have been impacts on how we live and how we work and how we socialize. And we do know that people are starting to talk about their mental health and well-being in so many different ways and through so many different channels. It's not perfect, but it is improving. And that's something we want to do here today. Now, I'm not going to read you all the data on these slides. You are quite capable of seeing what they are. But there are a couple of things that I do want to point out is that we do know that at least 1 in 5 of us in the United States will experience or live with a mental health challenge. 1 in 5 of us. We're looking at almost 150 of us plus on this call here today. That's quite a few of us sitting here and sharing this space here together. That's quite a few of us at our soccer games and our baseball games with our kids, or in our offices when we get to be together, or in the buildings that we manage and we support with our staff all across this United States. This is a human challenge. It's not those people anymore. It's not the quiet conversations in the dark, or at least it shouldn't be. It's time for us to really step into this light and take this responsibility for ourselves to look at how are we, and to look at the people that we're either responsible for, working beside, or care about in any way, whether they pass us in the street or live in our homes, to say, how can we acknowledge what's happening for now and maybe do a little different or better in the next steps and the next moments. Now, with that being said, our workplaces present some pretty significant challenges and risks, and by the way, added stress, which is what we're here to talk about here today, to how we live and how we navigate and how we work. If you look at the data that's up here, this shows that our well-being impacts whether we can or can't show up at work, how we bring ourselves to the workplace in whatever capacity that might be. We also can say that life and living is different now, and that has provided new challenges that we maybe before were like, no big deal, but today it feels like a very heavy lift or a load possibly on our shoulders or in our hearts. We also have this stigma, which we'll talk about a little bit as well, that we're not quite sure what our workplace has, what it feels like, who we can talk to. Is it safe to actually navigate things in a way that's best for me? Or do I have to worry about other situations or judgment or whatever fill in the blank of the barriers that are there? But we do know it's impacting us. We do know it's making our work life and our home lives harder, unnecessarily in many ways. But there is hope. And there's a lot of things out there that we can do, not only for ourselves, but some resources, as Tiana mentioned, we'll go through some at the end, but some resources are there to help us. One of those resources is this organization that I work for, the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, that partners with the NAA for conversations such as this, as well as trainings. I don't know if we have anyone, please let me know in the question and answer box if you're any of the individuals we certified mental health first aid. But this organization has trained over 3.5 million, just under 4 million people to be first aiders. In addition to this community education that we do, we're also a policy driving organization that pushes for policy and social change on behalf of all of our Americans, especially those who are navigating mental health or substance use challenges. We have a membership of over 3,400 behavioral health clinics and centers all across the United States and growing by the day. But these membership organizations, they serve more than 10 million children and family members and adults in the communities that you and I live in. I mean, even as we logged in here today, we're like, oh, that's my hometown, or hey, you're from the same state or community. We may feel very separate and divided in so many ways, but we're also very close. And the help that is there, sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes with a little bit of guidance, we can get the things we need in a way that works best for us. That's the responsibility of this organization I work with, and that we're trying to make that an opportunity for everyone and anyone to get the help that they need when they need it in a way that works best for them as they move through this recovery journey. In addition to that, the public policy, workforce development, public health initiatives, 988, hopefully you've heard about, is a phone number that we can use now for mental health crisis or support. It's a warm line. It's instead of 911. We were the organization that helped push that across the United States and through our federal government. So very proud of the opportunities and the things that we get to do to impact our wellness every day. And again, we're going to step into that conversation for you at your independent level, as well as for your workplace, and who knows, maybe even beyond that. So what are we going to do? We're going to do some definitions. Stress and burnout. That's why you logged in here today, right? Every single one of us has stress in our life. Not always a bad thing, but sometimes it can overwhelm us. We're going to talk about what to look for. What does this look like when I'm stressed? What does the burnout phase look like? Because guess what? They're different. They're not the same. We're going to understand the cause. We're going to understand some of the elements that play into this, but then we're going to take a really important time to look at this recovery quotient, this checklist for change, we like to call it, that says, hey, what are some simple strategies, easy things that I can do today, right now, and in the years coming to really help to navigate when things get overwhelming for us in whatever capacity that is, but then to prevent the opportunity for burnout or mental health challenges to have a place to grow within our lives. So we've got a few things to do. But before we get into that, as I mentioned to some of you as we logged in, I just want to give you a simple moment to arrive. It's Monday, everybody. Whether it's late morning for you or early afternoon for some of the rest of us, you've probably been pushing and moving and driving and emails and calls and meetings a lot so far today. So I just want to invite you into this space literally for about 30 seconds. Enjoy the image here. I took on one of my vacations out on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And I just think that this is a beautiful image that if you can focus on it for a moment, do a quick scan of yourself and let's bring ourselves into this place together. So I'm just going to invite you wherever you are, whether you're sitting at a desk or your couch or out in nature on your patio or in your office, just pay attention to where you're at in space. Feel your feet on the floor or the back of your legs against your seat. Maybe notice, what position am I in? Do I need to kind of shift and move a little bit just to settle myself into the space a little differently than I came into it? Maybe notice if you're holding your stomach in, is it tight? Is it moving freely as you breathe? I just took a deep breath as I started to say that, so you might have as well. Notice where your arms are at, where those shoulders might be, and check in right now if you need to do just a little bit of a drop. I bet most of us didn't even notice that our shoulders were climbing into our ears. And let's move them down the back a little bit and just give ourselves just a little bit of a space and expansion. Notice if you're clenching your teeth. Notice if you're staring or distracted by an email or a phone, and just take that attention away if you can, just for a few moments. And settle into the space that you have for you right now. And I don't know about you, but just taking a breath in and sighing it out can feel really, really wonderful if you feel comfortable to do so. So hopefully we felt brave enough to step into that space to give ourselves a little bit of a time to arrive so that we can come into this conversation completely present, as little distraction as possible, and move through this learning together instead of it just being thrown at you in the moment. So I'm going to start again. And here's my question for you. Hi, I'm Jen. So nice to meet you today. How are you? I bet I just heard across the universe quite a few of you going, "Oh, I'm fine." Maybe some of us said, "Nah, so great today. I'm done already." Or maybe there were other answers. Would you have ever felt comfortable expressing the answers? We don't have the space here to just unmute everybody for the moment, but do we ever answer completely honest and openly when that question gets asked? And it gets asked, doesn't it? You probably asked it 4 or 5 times today, just walking through somewhere or answering a call or what have you, and say, "Hey, how are you?" And then we just keep it moving. We don't ever hear what the response is from the people that are around us. This is a moment where I'm going to ask this question a little bit differently. What do you think would happen if we said, "Hello, how are you? How are you really?" Well, that open and honest conversation, it can really foster a sense of well-being in our workplaces and in our communities. We really are on this journey and this path together. While we might have different roads that we're traveling down, they do align in many ways and oftentimes cross. But so often we're so focused on what needs to get done, what isn't there, what has to happen the next minute, hour, day, week, year, that we really lose sight of what's happening right now with the human who you might be walking up towards or has come to you for a question or you're stepping into the space to engage with. We believe that if we would just take that extra time to ask the truth question, but then also wait and be prepared for the answer, that we could tremendously shift the well-being of all of us, whether at work or at home. Now you might be thinking, "Jen, that seems so simple. Are you kidding me?" Really not. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's about supporting ourselves and having a conversation that honestly touches our lives. Now, a little reminding of what this is and some of the stats you saw before, these aren't different than what I showed you at the start. But what I want to give us the opportunity to do today, we've arrived, we've taken a good stock of saying, how am I engaging with myself and with people around me? And understanding that the intent today is to build our awareness, increase a little bit of an understanding, and then also take some skills with us in order for us to leave. That, by the way, is the foundation of mental health first aid, is what we teach in our certification courses that happen in the communities with our 27,000 instructors across the United States, or in moments like you and I are getting to share here today. So why do we need to do this? It reduces stigma, and stigma is a huge barrier, especially at work, for us to be able to get the help that we need or even acknowledge what might be happening in our lives. We want to move towards a place where we can build our literacy, increase our understanding, which will then in turn help ourselves as leaders, people that we're responsible for in our teams and our employees to actually reach out or know, first of all, where to go if they would ever need support for themselves or a loved one, but then to actually step into that space and do what they need to do. Make that call, send that text message, talk to that human who can help them to navigate the next steps so that the now doesn't have to be as burdensome or gray or dark or difficult than it has to be. And as managers and as supervisors and as professionals in this field, it's really important for us to know what the resources are, know how to guide people to them, and then to also really be honest with where we're at and be able to move through that so that we can model the health that we hope to provide and support our staff, our employees, and our coworkers to be able to move through and live life with. So we tend to view the stress in our lives and burnout, by the way, those words, we throw them around all the time. But we usually live in our work lives in the term of short-term demands. It's like a sprint. We rush to get to this deadline. We rush to prepare for that. Instead of looking and taking the world as a sprint, sometimes we also put it on the demands of like a marathon. Any runners in here? This is a different kind of toll on our body. This is longer. It's also the dark side of us as professionals, this marathon push, and then these bursts of sprints that can happen in our life. It's the dark side of professional grit. Has it gotten us to where we need to be and in places of leadership and whatever? Absolutely. Fantastic. But it's also a place where we find pride and reward in the dark side, which is the exhaustion and the overwhelm. That tends to overshadow the success or the light that we think we're bringing to the space. Now, burnout that I'm going to talk about here, it's not just extreme stress. It is actually peak performance that has gone off the rails. Now, there's different dimensions, there's different symptoms that we're going to see and remember and look at. It's not just the long hours of working. It's not just the push and the stress and the drive. There's other elements here, and there's other tolls that a lot of us, we don't even have in our consciousness because we're so busy moving and trying to move anything and everything and every task forward. It's hard in the pursuit of high and hard goals. But it's also why, and why it's also time for us to get a little bit gritty about how we can recover from this and move through our experiences in a different way so that we can thrive, we can move forward. But I want to remind you, this is not something just like, oh, that's a great idea. Jen talked about this the other day, and now poof, it happens. No, it takes deliberate actions and it takes energy, which we're going to find a way to do that and some simple skills that we can do that for ourselves and to encourage those that are around us. Now, some more stats here, obviously, numbers. We all like them because we want to understand, hey, what is this about? What's the accurate picture? The data that you see up here was from those individuals in our workplaces, across industries, by the way, multiple industries, to say, hey, this is what my experience is right now. Now, the Harvard Business Review and Deloitte, they helped us out with some of this data. But if you look at the numbers on here, is anybody surprised by any of it? I know when I looked at it, it wasn't surprised like, wow, those numbers look so high. I was like, wow, those numbers actually look low. Like, how many of us are really reporting how we feel? How many of us are telling it in a work, survey that comes up? So while I love numbers and I love data, remember, it's just a snapshot. It's a picture for those of us who are willing to talk about it and move into that space, but it doesn't always accurately capture the true experience of all of us. Because unfortunately, with our well-being and our mental health and our physical health, we're not super comfortable talking about it or telling people about it. So in truth, these numbers are probably a little different than what we're seeing and capturing here. But it's a good place for us to start, right? We notice we're not using our vacation time. We're feeling like we're doing things without the necessary resources. We're struggling from unplugging from work because guess what? We have computers, we got phones, we got everything that connects us constantly. But it's also artificial and adds to the ease and the stress of what we're navigating. So you're probably like, all right, Jen, so what do I need to do? What do I need to think about with this? I'm going to put a couple questions up here on the screen for you. And I really don't need you to answer them in the Q&A box. Just look at them for yourself and say, let's do a little scan of who we are. Just like we scanned our body when we started, I want us to do a little bit of a scan to say, all right, where am I right now? So ask yourself these questions and we'll help with the answers. So number one, am I always exhausted? Okay. Do I feel like every day is a bad day? Do I feel like nothing that I do is going to matter or be appreciated? And have I been feeling like I'm wasting my energy on work and at home? Those are some big questions, aren't they? some heavy questions. First of all, there is nothing wrong with answering yes to one or all of these. I'm going to ask you one more. Are you burnt out? Many of us might say, yeah. Some of us might say, I have no idea, but I'm not feeling my best. You can answer yes to any or all of these questions, and you probably will at some point during this week or have over this month, because most of us have times when we feel like nobody cares, there's not enough time to do it, there's not enough resources to make the things happen. And you know what? Sometimes caring is a burden that's a little bit too heavy for me today. Well, but if we've answered the answer of yes to any of these questions, and we could answer it for months and months on end, we may be dealing with something that's more than just occasional everyday stress. Now, look at the words that I have on the screen there. Not the questions, but the words like always, every day, most of the days, occasional, right? These aren't words that just reflect the intensity of a problem, but they do respect that there's an ongoing situation that we may be experiencing. Now, what is that situation? Well, it could be stress or it could be burnout, depending upon what you answered, how many yeses you gave. Maybe you were like, Jen, no, I'm good. This is just for me to help other people. Then wonderful, great. Step into this conversation, help the rest of us out too, because we might be able to learn from each other. But what is stress? What is burnout? So defining, I told you we're going to define a few things. Here we go before we get to some strategies. Stress is usually caused by things that are happening around us, right? The environment, the work things, symptoms that we exhibit when we are feeling a little bit maybe overwhelmed or things are heavy. But if you look at the list of stress is go, 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 over engaging. It's about, I got to get this done. That's a productivity, move, 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 meet this goal, go, 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 and push. It's a little bit hyperactive. There's a lot or a little bit of urgency into the things that we're doing. And most of us, with that professional drive and grit that I mentioned before, are doing things to stand out, to accomplish, to be in a different place than we were before. Wonderful. However, our bodies can't maintain this, right? That sprint versus marathon, right? Where am I at? Am I doing both at the same time? What's happening? Our bodies are going to start to talk to us when stress is starting to be overwhelming to our capacity to work and to engage in life. Now, when that happens, we typically feel it in our physical body first. Remember when I did that scan, I was like, hey, did anybody notice your shoulders? Where are they at now? And did anybody feel really different when they actually dropped them down and were like, oh, okay. Whew, I see them now. Our body's going to give us all kinds of cues. It's going to exhibit the symptoms, all right? They're going to be the stress levels, the dry mouth we feel oftentimes. Our hormones are going to change and be impacted. Primarily, you ever heard of that stress hormone? It's called cortisol. And as we age, that production of that increases. I'm not going to get all into the brain science with everybody, but that hormone, cortisol specifically, it's poison. It's wicked for our bodies when it continues to have to create higher and higher levels in order to maintain our average, everyday, typical, I don't want to say normal, but typical way of functioning. It's constantly giving us more to maintain these levels of stressful lives that we live. That's going to impact our sex drive. We're adults, I can say that, right? And what we feel that's pleasurable in life that we no longer find pleasure in. It's going to impact our sleep. It's going to impact our muscle tension. We're going to feel it in our bodies. Now, if you're seeing any of these things, please don't start diagnosing yourself. That doesn't mean you're having depression or anxiety or whatever. It just means, hey, I'm noticing that my body is feeling, sharing, and living the stress that is around me, the go, go, go. Burnout, however, is very different than this. And this might be a surprise for some of us. But burnout is not the overengagement, it's the disengagement. It's the check out. It's the I don't care. Who cares anymore? Whatever, right? It's that kind of a feeling. It's a detachment. It's I'll get it done when I get it done versus there's a time and a space for it. I'll move through it in the best way that I can. Very different perspectives there. It is also the stress on our body becomes so overwhelming that our energy, we just can't ever seem to get back no matter what we do. A good night's sleep, that vacation fishing or at the beach, and we're still tired and exhausted, that might be the hint that there's some burnout living in our lives and our existence. Now, the body amps it up too. All right. It's not just I have muscle soreness and I'm not sleeping as well. My body's going to really start to, instead of whispering at me, it's going to start to scream. And a lot of times we see that in what's happening in our gastrointestinal stuff. Sorry, I'm not going to sound like the pink medicine commercial, but your body is going to hold on to things or it's going to rapidly purge them from you. Our energy is going to be either listless and just can't function, or it's going to be like, even if I try, why bother? And we just shift our gears into neutral like the car when it overheats. One thing you want to notice, though, with burnout is this thought process. I said it's about that perspective, right? But when we have this cynical button that turns on, when it's everything like, why bother? They're going to pass me over for that promotion anyway. Or, oh, let's go to this, whatever today to do the stuff I don't like to do. The cynicism, when that becomes the key, the driver, your terminology, what you're saying about all of your engagements, that's a lot of times when burnout kicks in. Now, a lot of times we don't know this for ourselves, but the people around us do. Our coworkers, our supervisors, our loved ones, they're going to call our attention to this long before we even see it start to take shape in our lives. And my suggestion and hope for each one of us on here is that if it is called out to you and brought to your attention, instead of being like, no, you don't get it, it's just a part of the job or not me or whatever, pause for a moment. If it has come to your attention, it's something that needs to be seen. Take a moment to see it. Don't judge it. Don't expect it to be different. Just be like, that's important for me to know. Now, what is it that I can do? What are the strategies? What can I put into it? It's not going to add to my to-do list, but it's going to help me to increase my capacity, or the lovely word resiliency, to move forward in a new way. So we're going to get to see how we do that, but we're also going to look at what are these causes. Take a look at what's on your screen right now. Any of these things, and if I wish we had the chat function open or whatever, but if you have them there, if you could list out of all 12 that are up on the screen, you could say, man, Jen, about 5 of those are pretty true for me or my teams that I'm responsible for. Or no, whatever, it's only make 1 or 2. Maybe some of you are saying it's all 12. I don't know, but these are the realities. These are the things that we typically see and experience when burnout is a part of our lives or the people that we're supervising. Communication drops, fairness seems down, our perception is that life and work and energy is just futile. Why ever? I don't have control. I don't know what's happening. It feels bleak. It feels dark. And that burnout thought, the light isn't gone, but it's gone from that beautiful roaring fireplace of comfort down to that tiny little tea light that's enclosed in a little cup that we're not quite sure how long it's going to last for. This is where we may be living. All right. And it's not a medical diagnosis. This isn't a mental health diagnosis. And it's experience that many of us have or will have at some point in time. But it's also possible for us to experience this and move through it. That's the key, moving through it, which is something I hope that we can all do and to navigate in the times that we're working in. Because if not, these are the consequences that our body and our brain and our life will sometimes feel the impact from. And maybe some of this and maybe all of it. And by the way, stress is actually more impactful on the body than an individual who smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Think about that. The risk to our heart and our lungs and our respiration and our blood. Stress and burnout can be more impactful than cigarette smoking in high levels. I don't know about you, but I don't want to invite that kind of experience into my body. But unaddressed or ignored, and we just plug, push, end the race, go through the marathon. Unfortunately, this vulnerability can increase for any single one of us. So what do we take from this? Well, stress, it's the too much everything, too much do, too much everything, moving too fast, hyperactivity. Burnout is the not enough care, the not enough, what did my mother used to say? My give a darn is busted. That's where we're at in the burnout world. We want to hopefully be able to spot this soon enough that we can address it, step in, know that it's not always just work related, but oftentimes work is a huge factor in all of this. Know that this burnout and this stress that becomes overwhelming can influence or impact negatively our mental health and well-being. And untreated and ignored can lead to medical problems, mental health problems, and combinations of both. So while we're not always able to prevent the causes of what I just talked about, there are many ways that we can move through and actually recover. Recovery is not just for substance use. We'll talk about some of that tomorrow, but recovery is possible for all of us. And it starts with building awareness. And that awareness is around our complete well-being and health seeking, not just with our mind, not just with our bodies, but with our whole sense and all the dimensions of who we are. So I asked you a few of those questions, and we look at the signs and we talk about this burnout and that flower, that cone flower up there. Have you ever felt like that wilted flower, right? That you're still here, got a little bit of color to me, but I'm just not at my brilliant state right now. We plug into our lives and we constantly work, right? It is a depletion of resources. These are some of the things that we might want to watch for ourselves and for the people that work for us and with us. All right. So as you kind of take a look at this list, please don't start diagnosing or being like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so on first shift or what have you, but just take them in as a big picture to kind of say, are these some things that I'm starting to notice for myself or one of the members of my team, right? That all of a sudden they're usually punctual and on time with the tasks. And now that's not necessarily the case. It's a different presentation. It's a different show up, if a show up at all. The mood is shifting. Maybe there's a difference in the use of substances or how and why we might be using substances. There's physical symptoms, complaints of headaches and illness or dizziness, upset stomach. We talked about that, gastrointestinal issues that I don't know why I did anything weird, but man, I'm just not okay here in my gut right now. And maybe there's the experience or the development of mental health challenges, such as intense mood that impacts our life, like depression or anxiety. These are some things that we want to pay attention to if they're new or they're increasing in a person's presentation. So it's not just one that I lost track of time today. That doesn't mean I'm living in burnout. But if this and my mood has changed and I'm not sleeping well and now I'm not being able to keep my tasks, you see how the more of these there are, the higher the risk there could be. It's not just one single thing or a one-day thing. So please don't misinterpret that. It's usually the accumulation of increases our risk, not just one symptom. Now, honestly, take a look for yourself. Let's come back into who we are. Look at the questions that I asked you before. I've expanded on them here. Am I cynical or critical, excessively or more so than before about the work that I do? So to drag myself in, where's my energy at? Am I using substances, caffeine, other substances, just to get myself moving instead of being able to do that naturally with my energy and rest and good nourishing foods and what have you? These are all insights to say, hey, symptoms are starting to get louder. Remember I mentioned the whispers versus the screams? Maybe these are whispers for you right now or people that you care about. Maybe they're a little louder and jumping for a little bit more attention. Maybe not, but we want to keep these aware. But again, answering yes, it doesn't mean that, oh, this is doom and forever. It just means we're going to move in a different direction. Maybe need additional support. Maybe I could do this and something differently than I did before to help my journey or my path move in a healthier direction. So how are we handling it? Well, first thing I asked you here was to evaluate. Take a look. How am I? Where am I? And be honest with yourself, right? Discuss with your supervisor if things are overwhelming. Maybe you can work together. Maybe there's changes or compromises or solutions that can be done, and set simple, small, tangible goals to get there. Sometimes we need to seek support. So often we think, no, I've got this. And I'll be completely transparent here. I think I can. I'm Wonder Woman, y'all. The invisible jet's parked outside. Like, I got this. Sometimes I don't. And I'm a professional and I teach people about this. Sometimes I need someone just to walk beside me for a minute or encourage me from behind. Maybe I need to call that EAP or talk to that supervisor, or go back to that counselor I saw 2 years ago. Support doesn't mean weakness. Support reinforces the strength you have to do what's best for you or the situation to move into that next space. It's your bridge. And typically it's short term, which is great. It helps and recalibrates and redirects and moves us along. It's about finding ways to relax and ways to take care of you, whether it's self-care, whether it's yoga, whether it's going for a run, whether it's parking your car a little bit farther at the grocery store than I did yesterday, just to get a little more fresh air or a few extra steps than I did. These don't have to be massive undertakings, but do something different a little more today than you did yesterday, including our bodies, right? Replace one of those coffees or Red Bulls or whatever the caffeine drink is of choice with a glass of water with some fruit, right? I know you're probably laughing at me right now, and that's okay. But those simple little things can shift us and help with navigating this burnout. I can't say this one enough, but sleep. Sometimes it's the hardest thing, but it's honestly one of the best things to help us with our mental health and well-being. Sleep allows us to recalibrate. It gives the body time to literally create balance without gravity or anything else. And if we get consistent sleep, our body, our organs, and all those parts inside of us can function at their optimal levels. I'm not going to preach at you and say get 8 hours every day because, it's not always possible, especially if you work for a shift works. But at least be consistent. If I only get 5 hours, always get 5 hours. If I only get 6, then let's always get 6. And try to go to bed within 2 hours at the same time every day and get up at the same time every night. If we can keep it consistent, our body says, this is familiar. Oh, this is the time that I have. And it can do the things it needs to do to really recalibrate ourselves or reset so that we can function at our optimal levels. It's about mindfulness and meditation. You did a mindfulness exercise with me when we started the session today. It took literally 37 seconds. I timed it. Every single one of you has that in your day. It doesn't have to be get on the pillow, put your fingertips together, om your way out and do a pranayama practice. If you've got that, great. But where can we find the moments of pause that work for us to give us the space to do that before the next phone call? Breathe. Think instead of constantly popping and reacting and going. Our body can't keep up. And lastly, let's give ourselves a little grace and space. We don't always have to look at things through a pinhole in life. Why don't we use a wide angle lens every once in a while to see what we may not be seeing? And try not to let this demanding or unwanted responsibilities that, we'll get to, you can get to them. But when they build up and they're constantly being tabled and set aside, they can become elements that can make this journey much more difficult. So give yourself grace and allow expansion in a way that's comfortable for you. Now, what else comes into this? There's experiences that I talked about with our body and the stress. Is it pushing and engaging or disengaging and checking out? There are things and other factors that can influence this either positively or negatively. And I'm going to talk about some really specific ones within your industry here really quickly, but then just natural ones that as humans and as professionals, we may have impacting or influencing what we feel, how we experience our work life. So as we step into this reality, we've already brought our attention to start to witness. What I want us to do is look at this now as a way to bring resilience as our focus, helping resilience be a core part of our culture and our personal experience. Now, that's a big word. We talk about resilience all the time, but what does this look like? One day is just kind of do a weekly reflection. I know in our teams, maybe every week, every Friday, we do a touch base or whatever our time is that we gather together and say, hey, where are we at? Maybe get a chance to just do a reflection. What is something you took pride in this week? Share it with everybody. What is something you learned this week that we can share with everybody? Or maybe where's our focus going to be next week? What do we think that should be combined and as individual? What this does is it creates a one learning, a group speak, a sound, a connection that's possible to give all of us a chance to speak should we choose to, but also to allow us to humble ourselves, to open our perspective, remember, pinhole versus wide lens, and allow us to learn and share that learning and honor that learning amongst each other. This is where resilience comes not only as individuals, but as our collective with our teams. It helps us move through tough times, and it can really help us to celebrate when those wins are happening. All right. So find ways to help ourselves. Now, in the industry, this is a little small here. Hopefully y'all can see it. But in the property management industry, we've got some stigmas. All industries, there's stigma around mental health and well-being as humans, all right? But different industries have different stigmas that we want to kind of recognize. And a lot of the research that's been done around this is you kind of read through these 4 little boxes, is that number one, most of us don't even understand what mental health conditions are. We think, hey, it's just part of the job, right? It's just what we have to do. Suck it up, move on, we're fine. 57% of us don't share what's happening to a supervisor, to a coworker, because we're afraid. That fear, the shame, the embarrassment that comes because we don't understand what's happening or the concerns we have are related to it, really, really can impede our opportunities to move forward and be healthy. I mentioned before that sense that this anxiety and the stress that we're just like, hey, it's part of the job, get over it. This is what you signed up for. But is it? I guarantee not one of us started our careers, signed on that line to accept our job, and said, I can't wait to work and with stress and overwhelm my life that I can't function and take me away from my family or fill in the blank. None of us signed up for that. It became a part of it because it becomes a culture and a norm and an expectation, unfortunately, but it doesn't have to stay that way. I promise you, it doesn't. Those that are struggling with mental health conversations or experiences or challenges, we hesitate to take the time off. I wish I could see all of your faces right now. And I am guilty of this as well. And here I am, subject matter expert, and I teach this. But how many of us have vacation hours that we probably lost at the end of the year? That we didn't use? I'll get to that. I'll plan that vacation later, whatever. And here comes the end of the year. And it's like, nope, you can have this many hours and bye-bye to this many. Are you kidding me right now? We earned these hours. We need these hours. I promise work will continue if you're not there for a few days. If you're taking care of yourself to recalibrate and get your energy in a place and your mind and your body in a place where you can function at your best, everything will benefit from it when you come back. Emails can be answered later, right? People can take responsibilities on in other ways temporarily. We need that time. We don't take that time because we don't value ourselves as much as the process and the goal and the grit that we put forward. But if we have nothing to give, we can't do those amazing things that we do every single day. Stigma is a huge barrier for this. Stigma is a lot of why we don't use that time. It's a lot of why we don't have these conversations like we're having today. But the reality is our mental health is just as important as our physical health, and that workout you do. And by the way, they influence each other. They talk to each other, and they both, physical and mental well-being, need each other's health to help the other one along. So it's time to talk about it. The risk factors that we have within the industry, there's a lot. And you all know this even more than me, right? Because you're working this every single day. But there's demands. The workloads are high. Time in and out of work is spent with work. It's fast paced, it's high demand, there's lots of competition. Sometimes our residents, sometimes our managers, sometimes our teams don't get along. It's difficult. Okay. Yes. And there's rising numbers of stress and violence that's happening in our communities. And the status of those that are living in the communities that we build and support and maintain is changing too. And we're seeing more and more things happening on site in our facilities than we ever did before. And now we do have more resources, but we may or may not be accessing them. So we do know that oftentimes that those in this industry, that we do have higher rates in the property management industry of anxiety and maladaptive behaviors such as smoking and drinking, utilizing substances to balance, to combat, to manage what's happening. We see it in other industries too, but we do see an increase, unfortunately, within this world. Now, the flip side of the coin, this is something that Mental Health First Aid always makes sure we do. We talk about, hey, there's risks, these are challenges, but we look at the other side. What I kind of jokingly say, the anti-venoms, right? The helps, the injections of support and protection, that even if we have all this heavy and tough and difficult things or risk factors in our lives, these things can be the counterbalance to it. The beauty of what you all do, other than providing homes and housing and safety for so many people, is that this industry is never going to run out of jobs. You're always expanding. It's always moving and growing and learning. Some at slower or faster paces than others, but the industry is always changing. There are work opportunities for all varieties of skill levels across the industry. Social interaction is encouraged. I mean, you're providing home and community. I don't know how much more social we can be and connections of humans and safety than that. And thank you for doing that. It's about collaboration and teamwork and opportunities to encourage involvements in communities and social connections and ways of living and experiencing together in ways that work well. And the professional boundaries are actually encouraged. You might not always feel that, but it is encouraged. And that flexibility in schedules is one thing that draws people into this industry in many, many ways. The more of these we have, the less of an impact the risks that I've talked about up until this point can have and take on our lives. So, the hope of having your jobs, the possibility and the reality of what you do every day that is so important is actually protection for you and for the people that you work with and for to help strengthen our resilience capacity for all of our well-beings. Now, diversity can play a role in so many things with this as well, and I would be remiss not to mention it. But recognizing that some of the people that you work with, and many of you on this call, may be caregivers or parents, taking care of someone beyond themselves and beyond their work teams. There's huge strengths within this, but it also adds another 20 hours of work, believe it or not. I don't know how we've quantified that, but wow, maybe that number is a little smaller than the reality. Those of you that are caregivers can probably speak to that. Our sexual orientation and how we relate to the world and how we engage has an impact on us as well in the workplace. Not always positive, sometimes hugely strengthening. But we're also reinforcing and support for individuals who identify in ways different than maybe what the standard is in this area or region or whatever, or the community of. And we're offering things in different ways and different ways to align ourselves with groups and that around that is helping to reinforce these protective factors that are already there. And then we have our communities of color, are varying this beautiful spectrum of skin, the color and experience and culture and life. Yes, there's impacts that sometimes makes it different for us, but there's also amazing things that are happening to bring in the beauty of the differences in all of us, to show the similarities of the humanness and meeting it in a way that can foster and hopefully grow each one of us in whatever space, direction, culture, faith, food, holiday activities, whatever it is that may be different than others. These factors play a role in all these conversations, and there are impacts that sometimes make it difficult, but there are also things about it that add to the depth and the beauty and the kaleidoscope of protective factors that we have right at our fingertips. So what's the solution? In our last few minutes together here, we want to look at how do we ignite this flame? Instead of living in the place of burnout and fading light or stress and overwhelm, not having enough to do all the things that we need to do in a short amount of time, what is it that we can do to use our grit to literally foster the perseverance and the resilience to see what can pay off for us instead of take a toll on us? Okay, we need this. But how do we survive? We don't want to just survive. We want to thrive. I want to encourage us to thrive. But we have to do that by looking at our capacity and acknowledging that sometimes as peak performers, that quick pause can actually feed the momentum that we can use. And when some of us think, oh, Jen, you're talking about doing things a little different, then I'm going to be lazy and blah. Well, lazy, let's change that. Instead of seeing that as wasteful time, it's recalibration, it's rejuvenation, it's refilling our cup so that we don't have to just be succumb to the enemies of sustaining peak performance. We actually have that grit to move through recovery, to use that grit to burn even brighter than we were doing before by slowing down just a bit. Now, not all of us are going to use the same recovery strategies. So when I throw some of these up here to look at, you might be like, oh, yeah, I love that. Oh, I can do that. You might be like, oh, absolutely not. Not for me. Awesome. Thank you for being human and an individual. You're going to take these lists and see what's going to work for me. Maybe it's a passive recovery. Maybe it's active recovery. But we want to make sure that we're looking at what's going to work for us and that we can be active in that feels good. Okay? Because when we do passive recovery doesn't support our brain, right? Just sitting there and binge watching TV, right? Or having that glass of wine, no thoughts there. It actually pulls out and shifts how our alpha and beta waves move in our brain, all right? Which impacts how we're going to sleep and how we're going to be in alert when we're awake. When we're in active recovery, our brain, it ensures that our brain actually can stay off for a little while so that our body can mend itself. It flushes the stress hormones I talked about earlier out of the body. It moves them from the system. It allows the brain waves to go in alpha state, which is our first state, to delta state, which is later, and allows us to practice actively resetting everything about who we are. Peak athletes will take full advantage of this. I don't know anyone on this call, has ever used like a hyperbaric chamber or sensory deprivation tanks or nutrition specialists or any of that looks at these focusing and these tools to help to go in different routes. They're efficient, they're effective, and they can help us move into this recovery from burnout in such a more healthy way that allows the building of resilience muscles versus survival muscles. All right. So what does this look like? Well, what do we do right now for each one of us? If you're in the throes, if you answered a lot of yeses to what I've talked about up until this point, number one, take an inventory for yourself. What got you here? What got you noticed? What moved you through the ranks? What brought you to this space? Don't judge it, but just look at it. And then let's take a list of priority for ourselves. Look at the things that actually truly matter and that you have the energy, attention, and capacity for today. All right? Be honest about that and make your priorities to say here for today or for this week or what have you, and list them out, but keep it digestible. All right? Don't put the whole world down there. But what can I do in this specific amount of time or in this duration? Once you get those priorities set out, I'm going to highly encourage you to practice some self-care. This is essential to make sure that your self-care is on the list and preferably way high at the top, not at the end. It literally means prioritizing your own needs. It's not about being selfish. It's not self-centered, but it is centered in self. So you don't get lost in just your job title or your responsibilities, because I promise you, you are so much more than that. You're not just the hat, the uniform, the badge that you wear, the logo that's on your shirt. There's so much more to you. Let's keep that in the equation, please. And at a place where it has the priority just as much as the next to-do list or the project or the thing that needs conscience. And you know what? By all means, take those times, take those moments, change your scenery, take a longer shower this morning, journal, call your best friend that you've been thinking about, whatever it needs to do, but use that self-care and allow it to refill you. Sometimes we need to change our scenery. Literally, y'all, this can be moving your desk around if you have a desk to go to, maybe come in a different way to work. If you're driving to a site or to a facility or a property, drive a different way, shift that focus. Take a vacation in the time that you've earned. Maybe it's by yourself, maybe it's with your family. I don't know, but change the scenery. What that does is it shifts everything in our body, the routine that we've gotten into that is drudgery or I had a friend that said it felt like they were moving in peanut butter, like everything was really hard and really slow. This simple shift can move and filter all that down. Instead of it being up here at your neck, maybe it's down by your knees and your ankles, right? They're still there, but we can navigate it in a different way. But rearrange it, rearrange space, find a new view. And instead of saying, I can't get time off or whatever, what is it the opportunity I have? What can I do to help myself move forward? It's about creating boundaries. It's about being honest with those boundaries and setting that time. If you know that you got to pick up the kid at 4:30 from soccer practice, let everybody know, but then get the stuff to you or ask their questions by 3:30 so you can attend to them and get out the door and be able to get things to happen the way you need to. It's hard and people will balk at them at first, but if we can set boundaries for ourselves like that, it's really going to help you focus and move and adjust your time in a way that works for you and for you to do the job that you do. Maintain your healthy habits. I won't be your mama, but if you drive a sports car or would like to someday, you are not going to dump that sour milk from the refrigerator into your gas tank, are you? You're going to go get the good stuff, what that car needs, and make sure that it has everything in its system to function, the oil, the gas, the top down, whatever it is, to make sure you're taking care of it. Please treat your bodies in that same way. You are that sports car. And guess what? I mentioned it before and I'll say it again, and Tiana will come back in with the resources and the links and all that as well. There is help there if you need support beyond your best friend or your partner, right? Or the EAP that you aren't quite sure how to get to or the phone number to call. There's professionals out there and people who have walked the walk that you are or that can walk alongside you in that to help you navigate what steps are next or what's possible for you to feel differently. As an organization, as leaders, this is also something that we want to think about is, be conscious. Be conscious of your style. Be conscious of the culture that's around, not judging it, but saying, hey, here it is. This is what we're working with. How can we support and make this environment different or more healthy for all of us to do our jobs in a better way? It's about doing what we did today. Think about what the stresses are and what can I manage now? What could we hopefully attend in the future? Can we manage our workloads differently or more efficiently in a way that works for us? Where's our boundaries? Everything I just talked about, we as leaders and as supports can really invite this into our spaces, into our teams. And by the way, please don't forget the person to person, the human to human element of this. We rely on phone calls and text messages and emails. And while efficient and great most of the time, it's completely really disconnected. Walk down the hallway, set time for that coffee chat. Talk face to face instead of always on the call or in an email. And that humanness, the reconnection that we've lost in so many different ways, or it's been challenged in so many different ways, this can be a beautiful way to reset and allow that opportunity in the environment and the culture of the people that we lead to be able to shift in a new direction as well. So as we step into the end here and we look, I mentioned this checklist for change. This is something that I highly encourage. If you want to take a picture of the screen, go ahead and do that as well. But these are the things that we can really put up on our wall, on the cubicle that we're in our office, on the dashboard of our car. I like to write things on my mirror in my bathroom with dry erase marker. I can wipe them off next day and do something else. But look at these and do a little self-check-in for who you are. Right? Am I paying attention to my life or just my job or my family versus me or what have you? Please try not to isolate yourself. Connection and growth comes from being able to link with the things that we need when we need them in the ways that work best for us. It's about being able to breathe and take that space, protect our sleep, man. Do the things that you can to just pause like we did at the start of our session today. Ask for help when you need it. Check out when you need to without excuses, without apology. And please don't feel that you always have to be the hero or the heroine. I said I'm Wonder Woman. I think since I was 5 years old with my little underoos and my cuffs running around the neighborhood as a kid. I don't have to have that get up on all the time. I don't always have to be the strong one that has all the answers and the problems to fix. It's okay for today to be like, yeah, this is not the easiest day for me. Right? The how are you really and answering the really. And please, as we're looking at that space and taking that cape off every once in a while, remember hope, hold on, pain ends, have an opportunity to believe that something in the next can be different than the now. And this is absolutely something that can be a part of everything that you do at work and in life. So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you when we started. Hi, I'm Jen. How are you really? How are you now? How can you be? And allow yourself to answer it and maybe share that answer with someone else. And if that answer is shared with you, take a deep breath and listen to what is being shared. Even if you don't have the answer, you can move in a different direction to help yourself and the people that are around you. Now, one thing that's going to be a part of the conversation, and we brought in this really here, is Tiana's going to come through and give you a reminder about the resources. I think she was going to drop a link in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tiana, about where you can get some additional supports. But when your light is fading, remember some of these cute tips here. It's not an easy process. It does take action, but it's worth it. Doing nothing is just as important as doing all the things. Surround yourself with people that make you feel good about yourself, or be that person to model and support what is healthy and well in those around you. And keep your cup full. Don't ever drain it. Don't let it drain. Prioritize yourself in a way that keeps your cup full and give from your overflow so that you're never without capacity, as the best as we possibly can. And the people get the extra and the jobs get the extra by focusing on what matters to you in order to be the best you can in every direction. So what are our resources? As I mentioned, you're going to get those shared with you as well. Please know that the National Council is a resource for you as well. There are opportunities, public ones, private ones, mental health first aid in your communities. We can guide you to places and classes that are happening where you live. There might be opportunities here with the NAA to get certified as well, to learn a little bit more and how to help other people while we're helping ourselves. But the resources in this partnership between the two of us, it's been going for a couple years now, and I really don't see any end, only expansion of it. So know that you have people on your side. I hope our time together you have found valuable and helpful, or even made you just a little bit more curious to learn a little bit more. And myself and Tiana and the other members of the NAA, we have the resources there out there to help you and are willing to guide you. If we can't find it, we'll see where we can find a new direction for you. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I wish you all health and wellness and joy. And Tiana, is there anything else you want us to address? I haven't seen questions come through. So I want to make sure we address things before we log off today.
I have been monitoring the chat. Thank you for those who have shared. Thank you for those who have been brave and vulnerable. We see you and very much appreciate you. In the chat, we do have additional resources on our NAA mental health webpage. And this particular presentation will be not only on our website, but also on our YouTube channel here shortly. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jennifer, thank you for all this wonderful information. As we leave today, please be well, take care of yourself and others, and we truly look forward to seeing you back tomorrow for our next web series. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everybody.